I'm going to be speaking with Brian LeCount. He is a seasoned marketing professional, currently serving as a chief marketing officer and vice president of digital travel nursing at Health Carousel, a prominent healthcare staffing company in the United States. In his role, he is responsible for leading the company's multi-brand marketing strategies and digital initiatives across various business lines and staffing brands, focusing mostly on driving growth and enhancing healthcare staffing solutions. Prior to joining Health Carousel, Brian held the position of Executive VP of Strategy at Gray Group, a global advertising agency. There, he was instrumental in developing digital strategies and brand planning for major clients, leveraging creativity to address complex business challenges. Welcome, Brian. Happy to have you on the podcast.
Hi, Darshan. Good to be here with you.
So, you've had quite a diverse career path from CPG to IT consulting and so on. I was wondering, can you share the aha moments that drew you to the world of marketing and how your approach to understanding customers has evolved over the years?
Sure. For reasons I don't entirely know, I have always been kind of drawn to the world of marketing, and maybe it may go back to when I was in school. I really enjoyed some of my psychology classes and some of my consumer behavior classes as part of my degree programs. And that really led me to kind of want to be close to customers and understand that. So it felt like marketing was a good, right path for me. I kind of am kind of part marketing guy, part sales person, I guess, and with a real fascination of how customer decisions get made. I think that's kind of what drew me into it. I think having worked in a few different types of businesses, I think one of the, some B2B early on and some kind of B2C, I can recall at a younger age, coming to the realization that B2B and B2C are not all that different. Now there are many who will tell you that they are, and certainly, selling to businesses is a little bit different than selling to, consumer products to individuals. But what I found fascinating and really gratifying to learn was that the decision-making process isn't actually all that different. We make decisions emotionally, even in a business setting. We attach ourselves to ideas and concepts and therefore brands, on the same kind of spectrum and under the same premises of laws of attraction and those types of things. And so I enjoyed I can remember learning that early in my career. I did work with a B2B agency that was here in town, and at the time they were really billing, what they did is radically different from, CPG related or consumer product related, advertising and marketing. And I remember just scratching my head with like this, I think it's packaging. I don't think it's really that different. So that's kind of what I enjoyed. Now I'm sure there's plenty of folks out there that would disagree, but that's my take. I enjoy the human emotion behind decisions. I enjoy insights work. Really deeply enjoy that work, and part of my opportunity at Gray and even my own shop prior to that was really getting at a deeper understanding of people's motivations and the insights that lead to them, and so I've just kind of always enjoyed that.
I also was attracted to psychology and things, and I found consumer behavior quite interesting. And getting to the decision-making criteria is always quite interesting, and that's what's made me also very interested in this industry as well. So I'm curious, have you found certain things that help you uncover insights? There's certain characteristics that you recognize about yourself that say, this is one of the things that I benefit from because I have this characteristic trait or personality that helps me tap into insights maybe a little bit sometimes faster or better than maybe if I didn't have these traits.
It was learned the hard way. I think coming up in, I had a couple of kind of corporate marketing roles early in my career. Then I started an agency of my own and did that for 6 or 7 years. But then I went to the agency that would eventually become Gray Group, and spent about 10 years there. And what I loved about the agency business was the repetitions, the number of at-bats you get, whether you're in a creative design type of role, a copywriting role, an account management role, or in my case, a strategy role, I always say that the in an agency environment, you get so many more repetitions at getting the work either right or wrong than you get in a corporate environment, working for a single organization. I did strategy work for dozens and dozens of different brands, and what that meant, from Microsoft to Sony to Conagra Foods to Procter and Gamble brands to Amazon to some pharmaceutical brands, and that the differences in all of those companies and in the people that run them and the decision making process that they each use are all radically different. And so you get a number of at bats, that you just can never get in another environment. And my role had started in a strategy function and remained there for about 10 years. And I liken my experience to the experience that young creatives in agencies have. And we used to do this as well. Our creative director, our chief creative officer would kind of hold office hours, if you will, about once every few weeks or once a month. And the young creatives, the copywriters, the designers would bring their work into the chief creative officer's office and review it. And oftentimes they would, uncertain terms, be told that work is terrible, or this could be better, or you need to go back to the drawing board on that, or whatever. And the amount of work that kind of fell to the cutting room floor was significant. But what that did is it taught you, through the eyes of a very senior creative professional, what great work looks like. And I had a similar experience in strategy with a boss and a great friend and mentor of mine who would send me to the whiteboard and ask me, like, explain your strategy here, write it out, like, give me the story. And there were plenty of cases where I was maybe a little more kindly than a chief creative officer might have done it. But I was told, like, that's terrible. Your strategy is showing, kind of like your underwear is showing. That's no good. Your thinking is falling apart. And that the repetition of that, of like having a more senior person explain to me why a particular line of thinking wasn't sound, or why a strategy I wanted to present maybe had some holes in it, was really valuable. And it ended up helping me see what really great work looked like. And a lot, strategy work, as a lot of it begins with consumer understanding. So you go through these frameworks of customer journeys or path to purchase, or everybody's got different, phrase for kind of the same thing. What is the journey that the customer goes on that can end up with your product being a solution, or your service being a solution? What are the emotional states they're in? What are the physical states they're in? What's happening in their life? What's happening in their family? What's happening at work? What problems arise? How do they typically, go about solving those problems? What are the actions they take? What are the Google searches they do, and all that kind of stuff? And it's really interesting work until you realize that the path isn't linear. And, it's very easy to write out a customer journey from beginning to end, but nobody actually lives their life that way. We enter these journeys sometimes halfway down the path. Sometimes we exit the path before a solution is found, and we start it all over because we got fatigued in trying to find a solution, and we forget about it for 6 months, and then we come back and we're already halfway educated, so we don't start at the beginning. And so that was a really interesting kind of learning for me, is that this path is not a linear path. And we are all organic human creatures that enter and exit this path at different times. And the real value is finding the emotions and the insights that trigger entry to or exit from those journeys that can be meaningful and really hold fertile ground for great ideas. And so in the pursuit of insights, I learned early that the insights I thought I had were not insights at all. They were observable behaviors. And I think one of the things that my mentor taught me was, hey, Brian, if you can Google it, it's not an insight. That's a behavior, that's an observation, but that's not a deep-rooted insight. And so, one of the very simple frameworks that I learned was the 5 whys. And I just love that. You get to a deeper understanding when you keep asking why. And it might be 5, it might be 3, it might be 10. But I really learned to, when you start with a behavior and then you start to ask, well, why? right? Well, why is that important? Well, why does the customer feel that way? Or why is that true for them? You start to get to a much, much deeper understanding of people and their motivations, and the things that maybe, are blockers for them. So I really loved that learning process. It took years, but it was really helpful to me.
I agree with you. Before we get into the five whys, I'm curious, how do you define insight?
Great question. I would define an insight as a deep rooted belief, stated or unstated, that triggers an emotion or creates a set of values in someone that defines the behaviors they exhibit. So it's kind of like if you started with the behavior, but you worked really hard to get all the way back to what is it that is in input to this behavior. Is it a feeling? Is it a long-held belief? Is it a tragic event? Is it a positive event that happened in somebody in the past? Is it something they believe, something they think, or they feel? That's kind of my way of identifying it. So, for example, I worked for a long time on some food brands. And we created a platform to bring together a collection of these food brands into a set of weeknight recipes for busy moms. And, we had to kind of figure out, well, why was this important to them? And when you could start and stop with the understanding that putting a good meal on the table during a weeknight is important to mom. Okay, but why is that important to her? Right. And so you start to then uncover things like the family doesn't get together around the table often enough. And if there's a great meal on the table, the family will get around the table. Right. Okay, well, why is it important for the family to get around the table? Because the mom wants the family to be more close and connected with each other. Okay, well, why is being more close and connected important? Because when the family is close and connected, then there's harmony, right? Why is harmony? So you can just kind of keep going and kind of realize that at the end of it, putting a great weeknight dinner on the table was part of how mom viewed her own value. And so she was personally connected to providing that for her family, because it was a signal to her that she was raising and supporting her family in the way that she wanted. Now I'm probably going to get myself in trouble because there's a whole lot of people that say, "Wait, moms don't belong in the home," and that's not my belief. It was just some insight work around that particular scenario, and the people that applied to, and that could be dads as well. It could be stay-at-home dads. It could be, but there's a personal kind of connection to doing that for family that signaled success for the mom or the dad or the people doing it.
Yeah, I agree. I think an insight is definitely getting to a true core behavior or thing that triggers certain decisions and behaviors, a core truth, I would say. And I think you're a big proponent of the five whys framework, which I think is a great way to keep digging to get to that core truth. So perhaps you could explain the five whys framework and how that has led to you uncovering deeper insights than you would otherwise.
In doing some work on an over-the-counter supplement brand, we had laid out this journey that, and it was a seasonal product or a product that people would take when they started to feel like they were gonna maybe catch a cold, right? So over-the-counter product, largely vitamin C and some other stuff. But the kind of thing that you would take when you kind of like, ooh, hey, you got a tickle in your throat. Am I getting something? Or you would proactively take, ahead of maybe the cold and flu season. And we laid out, this journey. We felt though that it was still missing like the human emotion part of it and what lies behind this. So we, and agencies do creative stuff. We laid out this journey that was like a Monopoly board, to make it fun and interesting. And each section of this journey Monopoly board had, life events that might come up or problems that might arise, or situations or things like that. And it kind of illuminated for us that there's an emotional journey as well as like a physical journey that this customer goes through, where they're feeling good, they're feeling healthy, they're feeling on track, they're feeling like they're pursuing and being successful at reaching their health goals, their physical goals. And then there are things that take them off track. That might be they were on a business trip and their flight got in at 2 a.m., completely messed up their sleep. And the next day they feel a mess, right? And maybe they've had several weeks of that. So now they're starting to feel sick and that, whatever it might be. But the work that we did was very simple. It was just pick a moment in that journey and keep asking why until you feel like you're getting to a raw emotional place. One of the things that I kind of discovered for myself was in writing out insights work and writing creative briefs. If I was uncomfortable writing it, I knew I was getting into insight territory because I was exposing deeply held beliefs or emotions that maybe I didn't want to share with everybody, right? Maybe it was a little too personal. And so when I found myself putting myself in the head of the customer, asking why at least 5 times, why do they do that? Okay, why do they believe that? Why is that belief important to them? Why is that deeply rooted? Why did they change their mind? Keep asking the why. And when I would get to a place of like, gosh, I'm a little uncomfortable writing this in the creative brief, I kind of knew that I was getting into some insight territory that would be interesting for a creative team to go explore.
Now you say 5 whys, obviously it can be fewer, a little bit more, but I'm curious, how do you know as you're doing the technique that you've had enough whys? How do you know when you actually encounter an insight, you know, hey, this is an insight?
There was somebody I used to work with that used a different framework, and I'm going to forget all the pieces of it, but she had an acronym that she kind of used, and it was AURAs, and I'm going to forget what everyone stands for, but one was, is it really authentic? Is it understandable, like really clear and understandable? Is it realistic? Is it actionable? But I felt that, like, personally, that didn't go deep enough. I really wanted to get to an emotional place. I mean, the reality is, in a creative endeavor, in a strategic endeavor, there aren't too many insights. The correct insight, and at least in my agency experience, the correct insight was the insight that unlocked creativity in the creative team. And so I might come with several of them. And frankly, they might not find all of them interesting. So my goal was to find an insight that the creative team, found interesting. So interesting that they felt like they could run with ideas. And I might feel differently. I might think that this insight's more interesting, but frankly, it doesn't matter what I think. They're the creative team. They're going to come up with the ideas. They're going to build the work. And so I got to find something that they find interesting. I always joke that the role of strategy, the role of a creative brief is to make the creative team believe that the world is their oyster when it comes to ideas. They can come up with any idea they want, as long as it's right here. And so a creative brief's job, a strategist's job, is to eliminate 99.9% of all of the opportunities that exist out there, and to make this tiny little space you've identified feel like a giant world of opportunity to a creative team. And if you could do that, that means you've got a killer insight and some idea starters inside of that very limited place that the creative team feels like is unlimited in opportunity. And so that was my goal a lot of times. So to get back to your question, I knew I had the right insight when I had the creative team excited about what they might do with it. And that might take 5 rounds, 10 rounds of this work to kind of get there. But I knew it was right when the creative team was super jazzed to go to work on it.
Mm-hmm. You've talked a few times now about emotional and psychological drivers, and I'm curious, why do you strive to find those emotional drivers? What have you learned that this is very important, and why?
I think whether we want to acknowledge it or not, people have an emotional connection to most of the decisions they make. There is an enormous opportunity to connect with people in a really meaningful way if you understand what those emotions and those motivations are. Without them, I think you may be successful occasionally at kind of transactionally serving the need, but what you won't build is a connection with them that's enduring. You won't build a repeat customer, a lifetime customer, without an understanding of really who they are, what motivates them, what turns them off, why they're doing what they're doing, and you find the right place and moment for your brand, your product, your service to kind of show up and mean something really special to them. I think that's hard to do without an understanding of their emotional path as much as their physical path through the world. And but if you can unlock that, and if you can truly understand an opportunity to engage them on that type of level, then I think you can put your brand and your product in to their life in an almost irreplaceable way. And that has to be the goal. I mean, isn't that the goal of every brand or every marketer, is to mean something so powerful to the customer that they eliminate all other options, and that you're the go-to in whatever category that they might be trying to address. I think that's the goal of most marketers, and I think you have to have an emotional understanding of customers in order to get there. Otherwise, you're a flash in the pan. You might sell once, but you're certainly not going to sell again.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you. In fact, I've often talked about it. If you can do one or three things, your chance of being successful are quite good. And those three things are if you can save people time, money, or make it easier, right? If you can do one, it's 1x, two, 2x, three, 3x. But I would advocate there's a fourth element, and that's emotion. If you can trigger an emotion as well, now we're talking maybe 6x, 10x, 12x, I don't know, right? It kind of depends on the emotion that you can trigger that can exponentially increase the reaction and responsiveness to your brand or product.
Well, and then they attach your brand or your product as a part of their own identity. And that's when you know you've won, right? When being a user of that product or of that brand actually means something to you and actually like represents kind of a badge, right? Like I'm a BMW driver, I'm a Mercedes driver, I'm Audi, I'm Jeep, right? You're like when you get people to do that, you've nailed it.
Yep, exactly. So I'm curious, what type of mindset or questioning techniques have you found most useful to get to these deeper insights and to be effectively use these five whys? Because I've seen not everyone can do this well.
There's only so much you can do with, I think, with things like with research tools like surveys and other things. Those are really valuable methods to get at kind of broader understanding. But I think when you're trying to get into the hearts and minds of people, there's really no replacement for doing that kind of face to face. Whether that's some different types of ethnography or whatever. But I think it's important to keep the conversation going. And so be careful in maybe it's your interview style or the language you use so that you don't cut off the conversation. And, I've taken some inspiration on this from a book I read. There's a guy named Chris Voss who wrote a book called Never Split the Difference. He is a former FBI hostage negotiator. And he wrote this amazing book that teaches people how to negotiate, but also how to communicate and collaborate in a much more productive way. And one of the things that he teaches is this idea of labeling and mirroring. And labeling is taking what somebody is telling you, calling it something, and giving it back to them to either validate or disprove or whatever. And I found that to be super interesting. So you might be talking to me about your day or your week or why you know work. I might be an athletic brand, and I'm curious to know, why do you work out in the morning, right? And you're telling me why you work out in the morning, and I might say something back to you like, so if you did it the wrong way, you might accept the answer and move on. But really the goal is deeper understanding. And so You could say, well, like, why is that important to you? But Chris Voss might do it in a different way. He might label it and say, you know, it sounds like getting this done in the morning is a key way that you save yourself time in the later in the day. Do I have that right? Or he might say it sounds like working out in the morning is actually a key way that you set yourself up to be productive when you get to the office. Do I have that right? And you're drawing more out of the person. You're encouraging that. You're trying to get more information. And in talking with people in that way, um, you can elicit a deeper understanding of what they just told you, and maybe get some more information that unlocks, a greater understanding. And so I really appreciate kind of that approach. Um, but I think that it can be done in a variety of ways. But I think there's a curiosity and an empathy to questioning that can really help you get there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you do need both curiosity for sure, but empathy as well, because the empathy gives you the ability to then think as your audience, but perhaps even ask questions that gets them to a deeper level. And if you think about it, ultimately, these are kind of things that people talk about, but not right away. They're thinking about it at a deeper level. And that's why you need at least the five whys to keep going. And eventually people start thinking more and more detail and perhaps even attach the emotion they might have felt at the time, they're making that decision. So I agree. It just takes time. And that's why this is a very effective technique to try to at least have a structure of the framework of the five whys. Can you give me an example of how this was something that you did discover early on, an aha moment of the five whys, and how it changed the way you think and the trajectory of a particular product or service you're working on at the time?
Well, I'd go back to the example that I started to give earlier, the food company that had a variety of products, and I think the business people in us and in the client said, "Gosh, people that sell consumer products, there's a couple of metrics that are really interesting to them. It's, what is the purchase rate? How often do they buy this, right? What's the share of basket of my brand or brands, right? And so the business people in you would say, okay, I have a variety of different food products. Wouldn't it be great if instead of trying to sell each one individually, I gave reasons for a consumer to buy them all, right? And then put them together. Well, guess what? Then you get a recipe website out of that, right? You're like, great, let's develop recipes that show them how this product goes together with this product and that product. And instead of going to the store to buy one because they're making something else, let's get them to buy all three because they're making this recipe we gave them. Weeknight dinner inspiration kind of became the idea. You're going up against, all recipes and Food Network. Like the world does not need more recipes. And so you're a food company that's come up with this brilliant idea of weeknight recipes, and there are millions of weeknight dinner recipes that already exist. And so why is that an interesting idea? On the surface, it's not. It's just a cloaked way of selling multiple from your company as opposed to selling one. So we had to make this idea more interesting. Well, to do that, we had to get in the mind and the heart of, in this case, mom. Could easily be dad or any, it doesn't have to be a parent, to really understand, like, what does this do for them? Well, it saves them time, because one of the biggest burdens of anybody with a family is having to come up with dinner every night. My wife and I struggle with this constantly. What's for dinner tonight? Geez, didn't we just ask this question yesterday? Right. And the question arrives every single day. And so, just putting things together in recipes make life easier. Of course it does. So that's one thing, you could explore into, like, what does making dinner easier do for you? Well, it saves me time. Great. What does saving you time give you more time for, right? Well, it gives me more time for the types of things I want to do. Well, what are the things you want to do? Well, I'd like to be able to work out after work, but because I spend so much time figuring out what's for dinner, I don't give time to work out. But now you gave me these easy recipes and I have time to work out. Great. Or I have time to help my kids with their homework, or I have time to watch some television with them or get outside. And so time savings is a whole area that you could explore, right? There's also this, like, I mentioned, getting to a place of understanding that the meal was a part of connecting the family, right? Well, what does connecting the family feel? Well, if everybody likes what's on the table, that means that no one's grumbling about what's for dinner. What does it mean that nobody's grumbling? Well, then everybody's happy. Well, if everybody's happy, then they're talking. And if we're talking, then we're connecting. And if we're connecting, then we're a close and meaningful family. And if we're a close and meaningful family, it's much less likely that problems are going to arise, right? And so you get into this whole other emotional territory of close and connected means more positives, fewer negatives, which means my kids and go to bed happy, they wake up happy, they have better days and all that kind of stuff. So, I think that was some really interesting work where we got past the surface level understanding that conveniently putting products together and developing recipes would be a time saver into an emotionally charged and meaningful place of putting a great meal on the table that everybody enjoys is the way that I personally can make sure that my family is close, loving, connected, and spending the kind of time together that every family aspires to. And if I can do that for my family, then I am fully delivering as a parent and a spouse or a partner or whatever it might be. And I then feel successful.
I agree with you. I recently opened up a restaurant in Thailand, and I told the team they exist for two reasons. One is to delight the customer, and the second is to try to evoke an emotion with every dish. There's two reasons why, and you know those two reasons, right? One, the chance of them coming back increases exponentially. But number two, one of the first things they're going to do if they had an emotional reaction to the food is they're going to want to share it with others.
That's right. That's right. You might forget what somebody did. You'll never forget how they made you feel.
Exactly. So I'm curious, in today's fast-paced marketing world, there's a lot of pressure to act quickly on data and not to go deeper. So what recommendations would you have to someone to say, hey, how do you manage the tension between the urgency of decision making and the importance of asking why to get a deeper understanding and to get those core insights?
Well, I think you got to find a way to do a little bit of both. The marketing teams need to move at the speed of business, and we don't always get to slow down, the work we're doing to wait for the outcome of a giant landscape study that we might be doing, or, another kind of learning initiative. So I think we got to find a way to do both. There's, data collection can be a giant, cumbersome, slow thing, or it can be a very nimble, everyday thing. It can be both. And I think, what I try to do with our teams is to use every day and every connection as a data collection point. I mean, every time we send an email, that's an opportunity to gather data. I don't have to do a giant survey to know, is this content resonating? What decision might I make after that? And we can do that very quickly, right? Or we can use advertising methods to test ideas very, very quickly. As opposed to going out and doing a research study on it, we might say, you know what, put some pay-per-click advertising out there, and let's test this idea for a week, or let's test 7 ideas for a week, or 100 ideas for a week. There's tools and technologies around, the dynamic creation of advertising and creative, and based on data sets, and you can test hundreds of creatives every single day and get quick data and make choices. I'm excited about what AI is going to do in the space to make decision making, testing and decision making, even faster. And so I think I don't think it's an either or. I think we have to continue to figure out how to move at the speed of business, but also get smarter, every single day out of what we're executing. And if you're doing that, I think most teams are going to find the runway to go do the bigger learning things, right? If you're consistently bringing learnings back every day about, here's what we learned when we did this yesterday, here's what we're doing differently today, or last week to this week, or last month to this month, you'll have the opportunity to get the support for bigger, maybe learning initiatives that'll take longer. But if the only learning you're bringing is the annual survey that you conduct, It can be hard for management teams to support that. It's big, slow, and expensive, and we're not sure what we're getting out of it. But if you're a fast-moving learning organization that pulls data out of everything you do, finds insights in it, and is nimble in how you execute on what you learn, then you're going to create an environment and an appetite for continued learning. I think you'll get the support you need to keep doing it.
Looking ahead, with the proliferation of AI and everything, how do you see the marketing landscape changing and evolving? And what excites you most about the future of customer insights and understanding human behavior?
I don't believe that there are some out there that believe that AI is going to take our jobs. I don't believe that's true. I believe that the users of AI are going to take your jobs. And so my advice to my teams is focused on become a great user, learn from this, use it every day. Because if you don't, you will be left behind by people that are using these tools. Will we get to a future where the robots take over the world? I don't know. I hope I'm not living for it. But I do believe that AI is incredibly powerful for marketing and creative work. We are using it today. We're looking for opportunities to use it more often. We're not scared of it. And we're getting a lot of benefit out of things like, rapid content creation, rapid creative production, testing creative a variety of creatives in different platforms. Mining for insights out of social commentary is a great application for AI. And I think we're getting closer and closer to the opportunity to kind of speak to the AI, go out and find what I'm looking for in social communities, and bring back the key, understanding of open public conversation around certain topics. I'm super excited about that. I look forward to it getting, faster and more sophisticated.
So I'm going to ask you the last question. Who in the world of either brand strategy, marketing, digital marketing, who would you love to have lunch with and why?
I really valued my agency experience. It might be David Ogilvy, who was one of the masters of advertising and great copy. So I might have to say Ogilvy.
And what would you ask him?
Does he feel like people have changed since those first ads that he wrote? Are they as valid today as they were back then? I bet he would say yes, and he'd probably give me a lot of really great human understanding that was in that. I think it'd be interesting to ask him questions like, will brands still be as meaningful to people in the future as they were in the past? We have an explosion of brands in every category, and what is the human capacity to form connections with all of these brands, and so what is the hope for the future for a brand that needs to make a meaningful connection with people in a world where the competition for attention is so significant? I've spoken to him directly and spent some time on the phone with him, but I'd love to have lunch with Gary Vee. I think he's a super interesting guy, and I think he has a perspective on kind of the and a book on the attention economy and the competition for attention. And I think he uniquely understands how ferocious that competition for attention is. So I think he'd be a pretty interesting guy to spend some more time with.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I enjoyed learning about your 5 whys framework, and thank you for the examples and so on as well. I appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. It's great to be with you, Darshan. Thanks.
Thanks.
Getting to AHA was brought to you by iResearch. To find out more about us, head to iResearch.com and make sure to search for Getting to AHA in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else podcasts are found. And don't forget to click follow to ensure you don't miss any future episodes. Thank you for listening.